Hi, I'm Ilya and today I'm gonna show you how to solder LED strip lights with cheap materials. I'm gonna show you these materials as we go on the video. As you can see, here's my LED strips and my wires. These wires are half prepared for soldering. You need to strip off the insulation and twist the inside. Let me focus in to show you how they look. To accomplish this, you can use your normal scissors. You take the wire and carefully strip off about 1/3 inch of insulation. Do it carefully to not strip off any of the metal inside. Now you apply a twist, and you do that on both ends. Now let's take a look at the LED strip. As you can see, it has a black PCB, and this specific LED strip can be cut every 3 LEDs. Actually, the majority of strips you can find out there can be cut every 3 LEDs. And you cut it carefully. And there we go. You can see this LED strip needs 12 volts of direct current. This strip is actually waterproofed, and that's why it has this coating that feels like a gummy bear. It is known as the enclosure, and it has a protection level of IP65, where IP stands for ingress protection, and the first digit indicates the protection level that this enclosure provides against solid hazardous foreign objects, and the second digit represents the protection level that this enclosure provides against the harmful ingress of water. So what this basically means is that this LED strip is very resistant against solid objects, including dust. It is also resistant to rain, but it should not be immersed into water. If you want LEDs inside your pool, you better get an IP68 LED strip. Take a knife and slice the enclosure off. Okay, now let me talk to you about the materials. We're gonna use very cheap materials, and the first thing we're gonna use is the soldering iron. It cost me like 10 bucks, and sometimes it doesn't melt soldering smoothly, so it's not very good even for a 40-watt soldering iron, so you actually get what you pay for. Next, the solder, and you're gonna find 2 different types of solder out there. Lead solder, which is what's traditionally been used, and lead-free solder, which it's gonna take a little bit more to reach the melting point, but it's environmentally friendly. Now we're gonna start to apply the solder. So basically you should do this the right way. You heat up the surface and you do it like for 2 or 5 seconds, not that much, and then you put the solder between them. It should melt smoothly and get glued to the surface. And as you can see here, I'm having trouble with this because it doesn't melt right, because it's cheap. And the idea here is to put a little drop of solder here, so when the wire comes in, you just apply some heat and they will get fused together. Here's another good tip: just clean your solder iron with some cleaner. You can do it with a wet sponge, with a special cleaner. And now let's go with the other end. Try to find a good soldering iron. Something between the range of 25 to 40 or even 60 watts is gonna be good. And this means that they're gonna be more powerful at the time to recover the heat they lose. Even the solder makes them lose heat. And some of them even come with LED lights, which is very helpful in poor light conditions. Remember not to stick the soldering iron too much. maybe not longer than 2 to 5 seconds, because you can damage the circuit inside. And this is how it looks. You can see the little drops of solder. Now let's go with the wires. We're gonna apply some solder. And first let me explain to you something about this new material, which is the flux. And it helps you with the impurities and oxidation spots that your materials can have, and preventing you from having a good soldering. And the way I use it is to actually apply it on the wire and a little bit on the soldering iron. Try not to breathe in the vapors. Now remember, heat up the surface a little bit and then apply the solder. This thing is not melting, so I'm gonna actually cheat and heat it up directly. And then you can distribute this all along the peeled surface of the wire. You can buy solder that has flux inside. That means that the solder is a hollow wire that's been filled with flux, and that is especially handy because when you melt it, you're gonna get flux at the right time in the right place. It is called flux core solder or rosin core. Let's solder these two things together, the LED that has solder on it and the wire that has also solder on it. Put them together and apply some heat with your soldering iron. They should get fused together. Well, theoretically. I chose a yellow wire because it's gonna conduct 12 volts, and that's the traditionally used color for that. 12 volts with yellow wires and ground with black wires. When you're dealing with a lot of wires, it's very helpful to have them separated with colors. That helps you to reduce the risk of connecting things wrong and potentially damaging your circuits. So it's getting a little tricky. I'm trying to melt it so the soldering can get in the most area possible of the LED strip. And I'm trying to heat it up more, and it's not working out. It seems fragile. It seems that it's gonna fall off very easily. And the more I try, the more it gets wrecked, all messed up. So I'm gonna try to add more solder to try to fix this. Try to get your soldering points firm and strong. You don't want weak soldering points, because when they're weak, your components are gonna separate eventually, sooner or later. What I'm trying to do here is to melt the solder on the LED strip and the solder on the wire together. But all I'm getting is to melt the solder on the wire. That's why they're not sticking together. And when things go wrong, just start over. And I'm actually gonna twist this wire again because it doesn't look good. Maybe you have noticed I'm struggling with the LED strip because I have the soldering iron in one hand and the wire in the other, and I have no extra hand to hold the strip. This is where you can use a helping hand, which is a stand with a set of tools. Nowadays they come with a very complete set of tools. You can have alligator clips that can hold your components while you're working on them. You can have magnifying glasses. Remember, your eyes are focusing on one little spot for so much time. You can have a holder for your soldering iron. Remember, you don't want to rest your soldering iron somewhere you can set something on fire. You can have LEDs. You just plug the helping hand to the wall and you can illuminate your work area. Or some of them come with the option to power the LEDs with batteries, which is very convenient when you're working with a cordless soldering iron. Here with this wire, I think I'm having a better luck. And about these wires is, the truth is that I got them from an old power supply from a computer. That power supply just broke, and I just don't throw things away. Sometimes I just open things and get the components that I need, like wires and stuff, and that helps you to not spend more time and money and go and buy new things that you already have. And why I chose to make this tutorial with cheap materials and tools is because sometimes you don't have the right materials and tools, and that shouldn't stop you from finishing your projects or whatever you want to accomplish. You just have to work with what you have. And I feel this was a little bit easier. The solder on the wire and the one on the strip just got melted right, but I'm just gonna add more solder because I want it to be firm and strong. A little more heat, and there we go. And there, this looks way better than the other. It looks more solid, and let's try this. Let's check if this is working properly. Now here I'm gonna show you how to test your LEDs, and we're gonna be using this old power supply from the computer that I told you about, which is gonna provide the 12 volts necessary to test this LED strip. And I need to tell you something about these 12 volts. Yes, indeed, we are throwing 12 volts, but we are also throwing 9 amperes, and that's a lot of amperes to feed these 3 LEDs. And the circuit is gonna start to heat up. It's heating now, and if you leave things like this, it's actually gonna burn, because you can get these 3 LEDs working with less than 2 amperes. And as you probably guessed, this power supply is out of a computer, so this is gonna be a plus in this tutorial. I'm gonna show you how to turn on a computer power supply that's out of a computer. Let me take this here, and as you can see, this is already plugged to the wall, and here I have this little on and off switch that if I turn it on, you're gonna notice that the fan is gonna start spinning, which is an indicator that it's working, and it's gonna feed all the voltages that we need to feed our components. Let me show you here, and there's the fan. Let's turn this off. And the trick is right here in this connector. This plugs into the main board, and maybe you have seen it around. It's the widest that goes into the main board. And to do this, you can use a paper clip, or in my case I used a tiny cable that was inside a network cable. And seeing this plug from this side, where you can see this clip that ensures that it doesn't get disconnected from the motherboard, you're gonna identify this green cable, and there's a black one next to it, and actually there are more black wires. All these black wires are ground, and the green one is actually the switch on of the power supply. Remember, this power supply throws a lot of currents and voltages. Well, actually not a lot. There's 3.3 volts, 5 volts, 12 volts, and minus 12 volts. And all these voltages get active when you connect this green cable to the ground, powering all your components. It's very important to unplug the cord from the wall. I just didn't do it because I have this switch, but maybe your power supply doesn't have it. So just finish all before you connect to the wall. With our working power supply, we can now test our LEDs. The only thing we need to do is to connect the yellow wire that comes from the power supply to our yellow wire that goes to the LED strip. And remember, we connected this to the positive side. And on the negative side, we have the black wire, which is going to connect to the black wire in the power supply. For this, you can use alligator clips. They're very handy, so you don't have to hold things with your hands. This goes here. And this goes here. I turned my power supply on, and you can see my LEDs are working. And as soon as I turn it off, they stop. Here you can use something called heat shrink, which is a hollow wire where you slide your wires or your circuits that you just did soldering on, and when it's in the right place you just heat it up with a hair dryer or whatever, and it's gonna shrink, making it look more professional, and most importantly it's gonna isolate it. Remember, you're gonna get better and quicker results using the right materials and tools. And don't forget to visit my blog Some Home Stuff for more tutorials, reviews and projects.